It is a Tuesday. It's a beautiful Tuesday.
So I love you guys. Before we start.
All right. And we are on in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Hello and welcome to the Arash Markazi Show, presented by the Sporting Tribune on the mightier 1090 ESPN Radio in Southern California, 98.5 The Bet in Las Vegas, and the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760 in Hawaii. I am joined by Adrian Hernandez, Armani Buckets, Brandon Deutsch, full crew here on a Tuesday. How are we doing, gentlemen?
We're going up on a Tuesday, baby. I'm feeling good. I'm hoping Armand feels the same.
I have not been able to get to the movies yet. Have you guys seen the movies, Barbie and Oppenheimer?
Have not.
Man.
Topic, baby. It's taking.
You gotta make sure you Armand, you can't settle, man. If you see Oppenheimer, apparently it's a once in a lifetime experience. You gotta see it either in IMAX or 70mm. Like you can't,
man.
You can't don't go and see it in just regular with no IMAX. Like you gotta wait.
My plan was tonight with no IMAX, so now you're making me reconsider. But my plan was tonight.
You can't go half.
Next. Speaking of this Oppenheimer, I want to ask Arash. So I got to ask you a question. Professionally, I want to know what's the most, I don't want to say petrified or terrified, move that you've ever made in your career, or thing that you've done. Because with Oppenheimer, believe it or not, Robert Downey Jr. said he was very nervous to now do a role that was an Iron Man. And he's kind of like, I've kind of had it easy. I would just show up and do my lines. And obviously he wasn't in the suit for all the action stuff. So it was a pretty good gig. And now he's like, oh no, now I have to play a person and not rely on all this stuff as a character. And by the way, the people are saying that he blew it out the park, and he might win an Oscar for his performance, which is just crazy to think about. So for you, what's the most terrified you've been in doing something?
You know what? It's really when this show began. This was October of 2020. It was during the pandemic. And when 1090 relaunched, they wanted to give me it was a 1 hour show at the time, but it could have expanded. And it sounded simple, but we could not go into a studio. Again, this was during the pandemic. So I talked to Scott Kaplan, who hosted a very popular show on 1090. And he made it seem like it was super simple, bro. Hey, just record 2 21-minute segments. I had no idea what I was doing. So, that was very nerve-wracking to kind of try to put together a show. I brought in Jihei. Quite frankly, I think she would fully admit she didn't know what she was doing. Again, big difference between doing a podcast and doing a Monday through Friday show. So Jihei's like I know how to put together my Bravo podcast. Again, she has a podcast where she talks about her favorite shows on Bravo. And I don't think they thought that we would still be a show. And not only a show, what we've done with the show beginning this week, and we'll expand upon it next month. We're now live. We're now on YouTube. We're excuse me. Not only on 1090, we're on in Hawaii. We're on in Vegas. So how this show began, when I think about it, how it began 3 years ago, that was terrifying. It was very terrifying.
And here we are, baby. The evolution. And you brought up YouTube. Be sure to subscribe YouTube at The Sporting Trib. Anyway.
By the way, I want to bring this up because we've had a lot of great discussions about journalism and young journalists. And I'm not only very proud of where the show's gone and how it has evolved, but I think back to how the two young men below us, Adrian, how they began. And they both had the courage just to contact people. And I told my students this when I teach at USC. You don't know unless you ask. And both of these young men contacted me out of the blue, and they just asked for a chance. They asked for an opportunity, whether it was to, talk to me. And we needed talent. We needed people to, for the first year plus of the show, it was just me and Jihei. And it was getting very boring. So I don't think Brandon and I don't think Armand thought when they contacted me that I was going to put them on the air. And not only have they've succeeded, they've really become the very big content creators on TikTok, and Brandon's out there covering games, and he'll tell his kids one day that he covered Shohei Ohtani. So I'm very
That's
proud of
fact.
these two young men.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember
Appreciate it.
those G-Hay days well. Those were the days. You forgot to mention, what was the mic called? The snow globe that you guys
No
would
goal.
record on?
I still
Yeah,
got it here somewhere. Yeah.
there you go. That's gonna be yeah, very important memorabilia one day.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I know it's good. The show has grown so much. I do miss the days when, in UNITA, just going in there and, seeing everybody every single day. But what can you do? It's we gotta do it. StreamYard's working. We're getting it up on YouTube. It's easier to upload. And plus we get to see Adrian's beautiful face every day now too.
That's
right.
right.
Please stop. Me and Brandon get to argue. What a Tuesday. You know what?
Right? All
Things
this
are
love.
right. People are at work right now listening, doing their thing. Like, the week just started. We're not even close to Thursday or Friday. And look at us with all this positivity. Very anti-first take. I like this.
I know, right? We kind of okay. So now, not so positive. I do want to get into something that has continued to drag on here. The future of one Damian Lillard and how this thing is kind of dragged on. A lot of people are not happy with the current state of the league, where players can dictate where they go. For my money, I have no problem with a player basically saying he's not happy and wanting to move. I do want to talk to you guys about that. What do you think? The quote unquote quote player empowerment. I have no problem with that. I do think at the end of the day, I get it from a small market perspective that you don't want to have this player that you've drafted or you've signed to a long-term contract effectively say, hey, trade me to Los Angeles, trade me to New York, trade me to Miami. Like, as much as the biggest names and those grab the headlines and those are the names we talk about, there's only a handful of guys with that kind of pull. And I don't have a problem if they're not happy. And with Dave Lillard, by the way, he's given it his all. I mean, he's really tried to make it work in Portland. And I do think this is one of those rare situations that it would behoove both parties to move on. So, Brandon,
Yeah.
I want to start with you and just get your thoughts. I mean, do you have a problem with the player empowerment? And when I view this, I don't think it's a league-wide problem. Again, you could really count on one hand, perhaps two, but I don't even think you'd need all five fingers on the second hand for the number of players who could pull this.
Yeah. Look, I think this is a situation. I know there's been former athletes that have been outspoken, like, just enter free agency when you enter free agency, right? That's what free agency is for. I don't agree with how James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving over the past couple of years handled their situations. Ben Simmons too, just because he was scared of Philadelphia and the fans. Like, that's literally why he wanted out. It was a whole thing that got to his mental. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but at the end of the day, I feel like this Damian Lillard situation is different because he did give his all. He gave them more than enough opportunities to build a winner around him for years. And again, they disrespected him by going toward a rebuild, drafting Shaedon Sharp 2 years ago, Scoot Henderson this year. And it's like, look, that's all good, but I don't want to be here when we're going through this rebuild. Like, I need to go contribute on a team that can contend for a championship, like Miami, Boston, Philly, wherever he ends up, which is probably Miami at some point. It's going to drag on, and it's annoying. And the GMs really are trying to take a stand here because they know it's setting a precedent. Like, even Damian Lillard now wants out. When are we all going to want out? But I also think GMs are taking a stand with the Celtics, not too adamant about offering Jaylen Brown that huge, massive contract extension that would make him the highest paid player in the league. Because there's certain things to discuss. You can't just throw away money like that to a guy that turned the ball over 8 times in a game. So I do think we're at a stand right now between the GMs and the players, and this is why the situation is dragging on so long.
Yeah.
Another thing that kind of stoked the fire of this as we all wait is Austin Rivers, who
That's right.
I don't know if he's a co-host, but he's a frequent guest of the Ringer NBA podcast and some of their NBA podcasts. And to his credit, he's been more outspoken than most players in this era, where every NBA player also has a podcast. And has really gave some insight. And he basically said, to paraphrase, James Harden and Ben Simmons were kind of the guys who started this with demanding their trades, and that this stuff is bad. Excuse me, I can't talk today. Bad for the league. Even veterans signing for minimums to try to win, like even that's messed up the money for players that aren't superstars. And look, there's two sides to every story, right? If this is bad or good for the league, I just think that if you have that power, if you have that clout, you can do what you want with it. If I came to Arash and said I can only do this show one day out of the month, but that day is the most downloaded, going crazy, he's going to allow it because it's best for business. And that's kind of the situation that we're at. And it doesn't matter if it's sports or whatever. And I I don't have a problem for after so many years, like how people get treated in any sort of business, for those that are really the cogs of making things work. You know what I'm saying? You can be a great GM, right? You're still not the dude that's going on the court and winning the championship for your team. A coach can only do so much. You can put him in the best position to win. The players have to be the ones to win. So when you're one of the superstars and you're one of the ones that can move the needle, or you're one of these guys that is in the final moments, final times to get that big contract before time runs up on you, kind of similar to running backs and their whole philosophy in the NFL right now. I'm
Mhm.
not upset at them trying to be put in the best situation financially, or if they really just want to win. And Damian Lillard's he's kind of an outlier on all of this because of what you just said, Arash. Some of the loyalty, how many years taking the team to the Western Conference Finals with CJ
Yeah.
McCollum being his best teammate and all these things. And it's also weird to me when people say, I hate all this. You know, there's a large portion, there's been a discussion, I think Kevin Durant even talked about it on Twitter, that some of the players believe that like people don't even watch our game. They are enthralled in the NBA world because of the drama, because the drama is so much more than other sports. Free agency, we're tracking flights, we're doing this, that, and the third. And you can't have both sides. You can't eat both pieces of that cake. You know what I'm saying? You
Mhm.
can't love all this drama and then to be surprised when players want to do these movements. A lot of people love the transactions. If you love the transactions, this is what comes with it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that teams have to see where they are in terms of their future. And if they've hit a wall and they've gone as far as that they possibly can go, whether that's the Western Conference Finals. With the Clippers, I mean, I had a lot of respect for what they decided to do at some point in time. When they had Chris, Blake, DeAndre, that crew. They hit a wall. They hit a wall in the second round of the playoffs, and I think that they came to the realization, hey, there's cheaper ways to lose in the second round. Like let's
Uh,
let's hit the reset button and let's try this again. Now, they got Kawhi and Paul George in that team. And perhaps that ceiling is the Western Conference Finals, and again, they've only made it one time. But if they believe that is the ceiling for that team, at some point you do have to hit the reset button. So Armani Buckets, a lot of talk about player empowerment, Dame Lillard. Your thoughts?
I am pro Austin Rivers, and the reason is because, and I know that it seems like I'm in the minority on this, but I have no problem or no issues with Dame requesting for a trade. He should be able to do that. My issue is when people are trying to strong arm their way to one destination, especially after you just signed a contract extension. We talked about the Shaden Sharp thing. You brought it up, Brandon. That was the year where Damian Lillard was injured the entire year. That's the reason why they were not good, and got a top pick to draft a guy like that. The timeline doesn't match up, so you want to trade. That's completely fine. And the Blazers should do right by Damian Lillard. They should say, hey, we want to send you somewhere that you want to go to. But my issue is when you say, hey, I want to go here and only here. And if that team doesn't have the assets to make a trade work, then it seems like it's unfair to the organization, especially considering you signed the contract extension. We didn't force you to sign the extension. You wanted to. Also, I feel like this goes back, and it may go back even further, but Anthony Davis with the Pelicans kind of, Austin Rivers mentioned Ben Simmons, James Harden, but Anthony Davis was a big one, with the that's all folks shirt that he
Yeah.
wore to a game. But the difference with that was the Lakers had to give up an arm and a leg to get Anthony Davis, whereas the Heat really they don't have the assets that Portland wants. So I mean, I think it's a different situation in that regard. That was more so the Lakers were everybody was like, if they're going to get Anthony Davis, make sure that you make them give up every single asset that they have. And they basically did. So, yeah, player empowerment is one thing. I want the players to be able to choose for the most part. But when you're picking one singular destination and you're kind of telling your franchise, you know what, sorry, this is where I'm headed, it makes it really hard to build if you're a team like the Blazers.
And let me add on this because I know we have a few more minutes here. I wanted to say, Armand, I'm not in agreement with guys like James Harden or, like I strong arm. Like, that's just soft. They just wanted to leave. They signed their contracts. Like, I fully believe in free agency. Like, I mean, you're getting paid 40 million. Like, come on, bro. Like, the least you could do. Like, you signed that extension. I'm more, the only guy I agree with is Dame, is my point.
Yes.
Because that's a guy that gave his heart and soul for years. He did sign the extension. He didn't have to. Could have said I wanted to leave, the following year and entered free agency. However, at that time they were coming off of a playoff appearance, right, or a play-in appearance when he signed that extension, or was it the year he was hurt?
I think it was the year he was hurt, but can we not make it a 3-team list or a 2-team list or a 4-team list?
Hey,
Does it have to be a 1-team?
If that's where they want to
Wait,
go.
but generally speaking, I mean, like, hasn't it usually been a one-team list? When you talk about Anthony Davis, it was very clear what he wanted to do. Like, I don't think he just wanted to be traded. I think he wanted to go to LeBron with LeBron. I mean, some guys maybe want to be traded just in general. But, like, for example, James Harden, I mean, and we'll see how that plays out. And he's not Dame, right? He's not a current top 5, top 10 player, but he wants to go to Los Angeles. He wants to go to the Clippers. Generally, these guys know where they want to go, right?
Yeah,
the heart.
No, and here's why.
For the
Because they
most
changed. Harden has changed his mind like 8 times. What do you mean he knows where he wants to go? He wanted to go to Brooklyn. He wanted to go to Philly, and now he wants to go to another losing team in the Clippers.
No. I'm talking now. No. I'm talking now. Like, for example, with Clutch Sports, the reason that I think that they're fantastic for the Lakers, they will try to get their players to come to Los Angeles. So it's not that Dame just says, and again, maybe we've had these situations where players like, I hate it here. I don't care where you trade me. Just get me out of here. It's normally not that. It's normally, I want to leave here. I want to go to Los Angeles, or I want to go to Brooklyn, or I want to go, like, they know where they want to go, right? Like with the Heat, when they build up that super team for the first time, they got together. LeBron said, I'm going to go to Miami. Dwayne said, I'm going to re-sign with Miami. Chris Bosh said, they know where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's just what. Yeah, go ahead, Adrian. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. The one thing I do want to add is that for every situation that you guys are like Anthony Davis, et cetera, there's also Isaiah Thomas giving his heart out to Boston, and Boston.
Well, that's the worst. Yeah, exactly.
And that happens a lot more in a lot lower variations of players that we're not paying attention to than the opposite. So it all equals out in the end, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add.
With the Isaiah Thomas one, that was really bad, though. I mean, what he had to go through to take the court. I mean, wasn't it his sister who passed away?
Yeah, his sister died. Then they traded him for Kyrie, a guy who's a team cancer.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, you go.
Back then,
I was just gonna add, like they think they know where they're going, and a year later they change their mind. So we're both right. Like Arash, you're right in the sense they know where they're going right now, but they'll change it in a year, and I think that's the big problem.
I think we're reaching a tipping point though with team versus player, and the interesting one is the Harden one. And I was listening to the Zach Lowe podcast, and they brought up a huge dilemma with Harden. If a player is on an expiring contract and has 1 year left, if he fails to report at the beginning of training camp, basically what happens is the Sixers can restrict him from going anywhere, meaning he can't go to any other NBA team, even if the contract is voided for some reason. and he can't sign overseas. He cannot play professional basketball until him and his organization, Philadelphia, reach a conclusion. And obviously, we saw that he chose to go eat Bun B's burgers instead of going to Joel Embiid's wedding. So
I'm not shaming anybody for going the Rolling Loud. Also, when you bring up
Exactly.
Philadelphia, you need to remember. I mean, it was Ben Simmons who showed up with his pajamas and his cell phone in
That
his
is true.
pocket doing the layup
Yeah.
drill. So it ain't nothing for him to show up.
Amazing.
Like, they know how to play
Yeah,
this game. It ain't nothing, man. It ain't nothing. They know how to play this game very smartly. There's too much money involved to be treating it too stupidly.
that is true. All right, guys, let's leave it there for now. When we come back, a lot going on in Vegas. The start of Raiders training camp. We got Spence and Crawford fight week here in Las Vegas. We'll get to all that and more when we come back right here on the Mightier 1090 in Southern California, the Bet in Las Vegas, and the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.